The quiet night. The city slept like it had forgotten how to pray. Fog lay low on the cobblestones, and every street lamp wore a pale halo that couldn't warm anything. High above, in a tower stitched into the oldest part of the skyline, King Valerian stood at an open window and listened to the world breathe. He didn't look like the monsters in cheap stories. His face held a tired nobility, as if he had carried too many winters without anyone asking if he wanted to. His black coat hung neatly from his shoulders, but the way his hands rested on the stone ledge, careful, controlled, told the truth. This was a man who feared his own strength. Behind him, the grand room was quiet except for the soft scratch of a quill. A young servant, Tomas, tried very hard not to stare. He failed, as usual. "Your Majesty," Tomas whispered, clearing his throat like courage needed permission. "The council says you should attend the midnight tribunal. They worry you're becoming soft." Valerian didn't turn right away. When he finally did, his eyes were not the red of rage, but the dark wine color of old grief. "Soft," he repeated, almost amused, almost hurt. "Or human." Tomas swallowed. "They say humans are unpredictable." Valerian's mouth curved faintly. "So are storms. That doesn't mean we burn the sky." The servant blinked, confused, then brightened the way young people do when they sense a joke. "I've never heard anyone threaten the sky before, sir." Valerian let out a quiet breath that might have been a laugh if he allowed himself more joy. That tiny sound changed the air in the room, like a candle dared to stay lit. But the peace didn't last. A bell rang from below, low and urgent, not the polished chime of ceremony. It was the bell of a boundary being crossed. Valerian's expression tightened. Someone is near the northern gate. Tomas stepped back, nervous. "Hunters." "Not tonight," Valerian said, and there was something in his voice that made Tomas shiver. Not fear, recognition. Valerian moved through the corridor without haste, yet everything about him carried purpose. The castle wasn't a place of cruelty, it was a place of rules. Long drapes muted footsteps. Portraits watched with the disappointed eyes of ancestors who wanted him to be harder. Torches burned with blue flame, a gentle magic meant to keep the halls calm. Valerian had chosen calm on purpose, because if the castle ever felt like a cage, it would become one. At the base of the tower, the northern gate stood half-hidden by ivy and shadow. Two guards waited, tense but respectful, their hands not on weapons, because Valerian had forbidden it unless absolutely necessary. "She's alone," one guard reported softly. "She's hurt, but she refuses help." "She," Tomas echoed before he could stop himself. Valerian's gaze sharpened. "Open the gate." The hinges groaned like an old secret being told. Cold air rolled in, carrying the scent of wet earth and something sharp, smoke maybe. And then Valerian saw her. A girl, 17 at most, soaked to the bone, her hair stuck to her cheeks in dark ribbons. A small satchel clung to her shoulder like it held her entire life. She wasn't trembling the way most people did near vampire lands. She was standing too straight, like her pride was the only warmth she had left. Her eyes fixed on Valerian, and for one strange second, it looked like she recognized him. Not as a king, not as a monster, but as a person. "My name is Lina," she said, her voice steady even though her lips were blue with cold. "I need sanctuary." Tomas exhaled sharply. "Sanctuary, here." The guards looked ready to protest, but Valerian raised a hand, and the night itself seemed to listen. "Why?" Valerian asked. Lina's jaw tightened. "Because I'm being hunted, and because the men chasing me believe you are the worst thing in the world." Valerian studied her the way he studied storms, carefully, respectfully, looking for what was real beneath the noise. He could smell fear on her, yes, but also something else, determination, a stubborn courage that didn't know how to quit. "You walked into the lion's den," Valerian said. Lina's mouth twitched, almost a smile. I heard the lion here doesn't eat children. Tomas made a small choking sound that was halfway between a laugh and panic. The guards stared like they couldn't decide whether she was brave or foolish. Valerian's eyes didn't leave Lina's face. Who told you that? Lina hesitated, and in that hesitation, her courage flickered, just for a heartbeat. Someone who died protecting me. Silence fell heavy. Even the wind seemed to pause. Valerian took one step closer, slow enough that she didn't have to back away. He lowered his voice so only she could hear. Sanctuary has a price, he said. Not in gold, in truth. Lina swallowed. Her hand went to the satchel, protective, almost desperate. Then ask your questions, but don't touch my bag. Valerian's gaze dropped to it. The fabric was ordinary, but the way she guarded it felt sacred. Like it wasn't an object, like it was a promise. From the far edge of the forest, a distant shout echoed, human voices, angry and near. Torches bobbed like a moving line of fireflies. Tomas whispered, "They're coming." Lina's courage finally cracked, just a hairline fracture, and it showed in her eyes. If you send me back, they'll take what's inside this bag, and when they do, people will die. Valerian's face remained calm, but something old and wounded shifted behind his eyes. He'd heard that sentence too many times in too many centuries, always spoken by someone small who carried a burden too big. He reached out, not to her satchel, but to the space between them, offering his hand like a bridge instead of a chain. "Come inside," he said. Lina stared at his hand as if it were a trick. "Why would you help me?" Valerian answered with a quiet honesty that surprised even Tomas. "Because I know what it feels like," he said, "to be blamed for darkness you didn't choose." She took his hand. The moment her skin touched his, Valerian flinched, not from pain, but from shock. A pulse of warmth rushed through him, impossible and sudden, like sunlight remembered. His fingers tightened unintentionally, and Lina's eyes widened as if she felt it too. In the same instant, the satchel against her side shifted, and a faint glow seeped through the seams, soft, golden, alive. Valerian's breath caught. Tomas saw it and stepped back, whispering, "That light, it can't be." Outside the gate, the hunters' voices grew louder, closer, and one of them shouted a name that sliced through the fog. "Bring us the girl and the relic. The vampire king doesn't deserve mercy." Valerian's gaze locked on the glowing satchel, and for the first time in years, real fear flashed across his face, not fear of death, but fear of what he might be forced to become. He looked down at Lina, his voice almost breaking. "Child," he whispered, "what did you bring into my home?" Lina's throat worked as she tried to answer, but the golden light brightened, and the castle torches flickered blue-white as if the building itself was reacting. Then the satchel gave a gentle, unmistakable thump from the inside, like something alive had just woken up. And Valerian realized, with a sinking heart, that letting her in had already changed everything, the thing that woke. The gate shut behind them with a heavy final sound, cutting off the hunters, shouts as if the castle had swallowed the night. The air inside was warmer, but Lina didn't relax. Her shoulders stayed stiff, and her hand never left the satchel. The golden glow pulsed once more, soft and steady, like a heartbeat trying to be brave. Valerian held her wrist gently, not restraining, just grounding her. He didn't look at the light again right away, as if staring would make it more dangerous or more real. Instead, he listened. The distant voices outside, the quick breath of the girl beside him, and under it all, the old building's quiet awareness. This castle had seen wars. It knew when a new one was being carried through its doors. Tomas hovered a step behind, torn between curiosity and common sense. "Your Majesty," he whispered, "the council will." "Let them," Valerian said, and his voice was calm enough to be kind, yet sharp enough to end arguments. He guided Lina down the corridor lined with faded banners. The blue torches leaned toward her as she passed, their flames lifting and trembling like they recognized the golden light and didn't know whether to bow or flee. At the end of the hall was a small room that didn't match the rest of the castle. No grand throne, no polished marble. Just a fire, a kettle, and a worn chair with a blanket folded neatly over the back. Valerian's kingly chamber for nights when he wanted to remember what it felt like to be simple. "Sit," he told Lina. She didn't. "You're not going to lock me in here." Valerian's eyebrows lifted slightly. "If I wanted a prisoner, I wouldn't offer a chair." That earned him a quick, reluctant half-smile from Tomas, who couldn't help muttering, "A very polite prison, though." Lina glanced at Tomas, suspicious. "You make jokes in a vampire castle." Tomas shrugged. "If I don't, I'll scream. Jokes are quieter." For a second, Lina's face softened. It was tiny, but Valerian noticed. The girl wasn't made of steel, she was made of effort. She was forcing herself to be fearless because fear would make her drop the only thing keeping her alive. Valerian poured water into a cup and set it on the table, then moved back, giving her space. "Drink, slowly. Your body is shaking even if your pride refuses to admit it." Lina stared at him as if she expected a trick. Then she took the cup with both hands. Her fingers trembled around it, and the warmth seemed to surprise her. She drank like someone who hadn't been cared for in a long time. The satchel thumped again, gentler this time, like a child knocking from inside a closet. Tomas' eyes went wide. "Sir, something is in there." "I know," Valerian said, and his gaze didn't leave Lina. "Tell me the truth. What did you bring?" Lina swallowed. Her voice dropped. "They called it a relic. I didn't know what it was when I stole it. I only knew what they were going to do with it." "You stole it," Tomas repeated, half shocked, half impressed. "From who?" Lina's eyes flashed. "From men who smile while they destroy. They wear holy symbols and speak about purity. They burned a family's home because the baby inside was born with a mark on his neck. I grabbed this satchel when they weren't looking and ran." Valerian's face tightened, not with anger at Lina, but with the familiar ache of history repeating itself. He had lived long enough to see people justify cruelty with pretty words. He hated how easily righteous could become merciless. "What is inside?" he asked again, quieter now. Lina's hands went to the satchel instinctively. "I don't know exactly. I only know the light started the moment I crossed into your lands, like it was waiting." Valerian's throat moved as he swallowed something heavy. "Waiting for me." The room seemed to dim around that sentence. The fire crackled, and the blue torches outside hissed softly, uneasy. Tomas tried to sound brave and failed. "Your Majesty, if it's a holy relic, it could hurt you." Valerian didn't deny it. He stepped closer to the table, then stopped, careful like a man approaching a wounded animal. His expression was not fearsome. It was protective, almost apologetic. "Lina," he said, "I can't promise you that my court will accept you. I can't promise you that the hunters will leave. But I can promise you this. In my home, no one takes something from you by force." Lina's eyes stung with sudden tears she refused to let fall. "You say that like it's normal." Valerian's voice softened. "It should be." Outside, the distant shouts grew fainter for a moment, as if the hunters were regrouping. The quiet that replaced them was worse, like a held breath before a storm. Then the door behind them opened without a knock. 3 figures entered wearing dark velvet and silver clasps, the Council of Night. Their faces were smooth and composed, but their eyes were cold with caution. At their center walked Lady Myralda, Valerian's oldest advisor, beautiful, sharp, and endlessly disappointed in mercy. She did not look at Lina first. She looked at the satchel. "Well," Myralda said, her tone like a blade that didn't need to be swung to cut. "So the rumors are true. You've brought a human into the keep." Valerian didn't move. She's under my protection." Myrlda smiled without warmth. "Protection is a luxury, Your Majesty, and luxuries attract enemies." Lina stood, chin lifted. "I didn't come here to cause trouble." Myrlda's eyes flicked to her face, and something like fascination passed through. "Trouble finds everyone, child. Some of us simply learn to use it." Tomas stepped forward, then thought better of it and stepped back again, whispering to himself, "Oh no, not the dramatic one." Valerian's gaze snapped to Myrlda. "Say what you came to say." Myrlda's gloved hand extended toward the satchel, slow and confident. "Hand it over. If it is what I believe it is, it does not belong in the hands of a frightened girl. It belongs with the council, where it can be contained." Lina flinched. Valerian didn't. "No," Valerian said. That single word landed like thunder in a room built for whispers. Even Tomas stopped breathing for a moment. Myrlda's smile faded. "Do you understand what you're refusing?" Valerian's eyes darkened. "I understand exactly. I am refusing to become the kind of king who takes first and justifies later." For the first time, Myrlda's composure cracked. "Your compassion will get us all killed." Valerian leaned closer, voice low but steady. "Then we will live bravely until that day comes." The satchel pulsed brighter, as if it agreed. Myrlda's gaze sharpened. "It's reacting to you." Valerian's jaw tightened. "Yes." Lina's voice came out smaller than she wanted. "What does that mean?" Valerian looked at her as if the answer hurt. "It means the thing inside recognizes something in my blood, or in my curse." Tomas murmured, "That is not comforting." Myrlda stepped nearer, and the golden light flickered like it didn't trust her. "Open it," she commanded. "No," Lina said, surprising everyone, including herself. "Not for you." Valerian's eyes softened a fraction, proud and worried at the same time. Courage looked good on her, but he feared what courage would cost. Myrlda's voice dropped, dangerous in its politeness. "Girl, you are standing in the heart of the night court. You do not get to make demands." Valerian moved between them instantly. No violence, no roar, just presence. A shield made of restraint. "You will not threaten her in my home," he said. Myrlda's eyes flashed. "Then you will choose a human over your own people." Valerian's answer was a quiet truth. "I am choosing the kind of people we will be." For a long moment, no one spoke. The fire popped. The castle sighed. Outside, the distant hunting horns sounded again, closer now, as if the forest itself had decided to betray them. Then the satchel gave a harder thump, followed by a thin, fragile sound. A small cry. Not a monster's roar, not a weapon's hum. A baby's cry, faint but real, leaking through the seams like a secret that could no longer be contained. Lina's eyes filled instantly. "No, it can't be." Tomas stared, mouth open. "Please tell me that bag is not carrying a baby." Myrlda went perfectly still, her face paling. "Your Majesty," she whispered, suddenly shaken, "if that child is what I think it is, the hunters outside aren't here to kill you." Valerian's voice came out rough. "Then why are they here?" Myrlda looked at the glowing satchel, as if it were a sunrise and a funeral at the same time. "They're here," she said, "to claim the heir." Valerian's hand rose toward the satchel, trembling for the first time in centuries, while Lina clutched it tighter like she could protect the world with her arms. And outside the northern gate, the hunters began to chant, one word over and over, loud enough to reach the stone. "Give him back." Valerian met Lina's eyes, and the compassion in his face broke into something raw. "If there is an heir in that bag," he whispered, "then my entire kingdom has been built on a lie." The satchel's golden light flared, and the crying turned into a frightened, desperate wail that filled the small room. Valerian reached for the clasp. Lina shook her head, terrified. Don't open it. His fingers stopped, hovering, while the chanting outside grew louder, closer, inevitable. And the lock clicked by itself, the dawn he never asked for. The clasp opened with a soft metal sigh, like it had been holding its breath for days. Lina's hands shook so hard the satchel nearly slipped, and Valerian caught it instinctively, careful not to touch more than he had to. He expected pain, smoke, punishment from heaven, every old fear a vampire is taught to accept. Instead, warmth spilled into the room. Not heat like fire, but warmth like a memory of being forgiven. The golden light rose in a gentle wave, bathing the walls and turning the blue torches pale and quiet, as if they were suddenly shy. Tomas backed into the doorway, one hand covering his mouth. Inside the satchel, wrapped in layers of cloth and dried lavender, was not a weapon. It was a baby. Small, red-faced from crying, fists clenched in stubborn outrage at the world. A thin, moon-shaped mark sat just below his ear. The moment Valerian saw it, something in his chest pulled tight, like an ancient not finally remembering it could be untied. Lina made a broken sound. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. She reached for the child as if she had been afraid to love him until she had proof he was real. The baby's cries softened when Valerian stepped closer. That was the strangest part. The child turned his head toward the vampire king and blinked, wide-eyed, as if recognizing a voice he'd heard in dreams. Tomas whispered, stunned, "He's not afraid of you." Valerian's voice came out low. "Neither are you anymore." Tomas froze, then slowly lowered his hand from his mouth. "I'm still a little afraid, sir, but in the way you're afraid of a thunderstorm, not because it's evil, because it's powerful." Valerian didn't smile, but something gentle moved behind his eyes. "That's the most honest compliment I've received in a century." The baby hiccuped, then reached out a tiny hand. His fingers curled around Valerian's gloved thumb with surprising strength, like he was making a promise without words. And Valerian, king of night, ruler of shadows, went still as stone. Outside, the hunters, chanting, rose again, closer and uglier now. The sound pressed against the castle walls like a crowd pressing against a door. "Get him back." Lady Myralda stood at the edge of the light, her expression changing from fear to calculation and back again. It was the face of someone realizing the world had turned under her feet. "This child," she said carefully, "cannot remain here." Valerian didn't look away from the baby. "He already is here." Myralda's voice tightened. "Your Majesty, listen to reason. If the hunters are correct, that mark means he is the dawn heir, a child born with the ability to survive both sunlight and night." Tomas stared. "Both, that's impossible." "Not impossible," Myralda replied, almost bitter. "Just inconvenient for everyone who benefits from the old stories." Valerian finally lifted his gaze to her, and the compassion there was edged with something firmer than steel. "Say what you truly mean." Myralda hesitated, then said it plainly. "If the dawn heir grows, your reign becomes unnecessary. Our people will ask why they ever needed a king who hides from the sun." The room went quiet in a way that hurt. Lina's eyes widened. The baby made a soft, questioning noise, as if he sensed the tension. Valerian breathed out slowly. When he spoke, there was no rage, only the ache of truth. "So this is not about safety. It's about control." Myralda's chin rose. "It is about survival." Valerian stepped closer, not threatening, just unmovable. "Survival without a soul is just a longer form of dying." For a moment, Myralda looked almost tired, like she had been carrying her own fear for too long to put it down easily. But fear can be clever. It can wear the mask of duty. The horns outside blared again. A harsh voice shouted over the chanting, closer than before. "We have fire for your gates and blessings for your curse. Hand over the child and we will spare your servants. Tomas flinched. They won't spare anyone. Valerian's eyes hardened. No, they won't. He turned to Lina. Tell me everything you saw. Lina hugged the baby closer, rocking him with instinctive gentleness. The child stopped crying, lulled by her steady breathing. They weren't normal hunters, she said. They wore symbols and called themselves pure, but I watched them laugh while they pushed people to their knees. They wanted this baby because they believe whoever holds him will rule the future. They don't want to protect him. They want to own him. Valerian nodded slowly, as if every word was a nail sealing a decision. Then we do not give him back. Myralda's eyes flashed. Your Majesty. We do not give him back, Valerian repeated, and the castle seemed to accept it as law. He moved to the shelf by the fire and took down an old brass bell, smaller than the boundary bell. This one used only when the kingdom needed to be reminded what it stood for. Tomas watched with wide eyes. That bell hasn't rung since, Tomas began. Since my father used fear to keep peace, Valerian finished. Tonight it will ring for something else. He handed the baby to Lina carefully, as if placing a star into human arms. Hold him close. Whatever happens, don't let anyone convince you that kindness is weakness. Lina blinked fast. I'm not the strong one here. Valerian's gaze softened. You ran with the future in a satchel. You walked into a castle you were taught to fear. Don't tell me you aren't strong. Tomas cleared his throat, trying to keep his voice steady. And what do we do, sir, besides become legends? Valerian's mouth twitched. We become honest. He opened the door and stepped into the corridor. The blue torches straightened, as if saluting. Myralda followed, tense. Where are you going? She demanded. To the gate, Valerian said. You can't. I can, Valerian replied. A king should be the first to face a threat, not the last to hide behind walls. Tomas hurried after him, whispering, This is the part where I normally faint, but I'm trying a new personality. Valerian glanced at him. Good, keep it. They reached the northern gate, and the sound outside hit them like a wave, boots on earth, shouted prayers, the crackle of torches. Shadows flickered against the stone. The guards looked pale, waiting for permission to either fight or run. Valerian raised his hand. Open it. The gate groaned wide. Cold wind rushed in carrying smoke and wet leaves. Beyond the threshold stood the hunters, a line of men with torches, iron charms, and confident eyes. At their front was a leader with a silver emblem at his throat and a smile too clean to be trusted. Vampire King, the leader called. We came for what is ours, a child stolen from righteous hands. Valerian stepped forward alone. He did not bear fangs. He did not threaten. He stood with empty hands and a steady gaze. The child is not yours, Valerian said. He is a person. The leader laughed. A person, it's a tool of prophecy, a key. Give him to us and we will leave you your dark little kingdom. Valerian looked past them at the forest, at the torches, at the hunger in their faces. He had seen this hunger wearing different uniforms across centuries. It always asked for the same thing, someone smaller to sacrifice. You want me to prove I am a monster, Valerian said quietly. The leader smirked. We already know you are. Valerian nodded once, as if accepting a burden he'd never wanted. Then he lifted his voice so his guards, his servants, and the watching shadows could hear. Then I will prove something else, he said. I will prove that even a monster can choose mercy. The leader's smile wavered. What are you talking about? Valerian turned his head slightly. Tomas. Tomas swallowed hard and rang the brass bell. Its sound wasn't loud, but it was clear, pure as a note in a silent room. And from the surrounding streets, doors began to open. Not vampire soldiers marching, not an army, just people. Vampires from the lower quarter, cloaked and nervous. Human merchants who had quietly traded in the night markets for years, servants and cooks and stable hands, even a few former hunters who had left that life behind and never spoken about why. They stepped into the open, not with weapons raised, but with lanterns lifted high. The hunters hesitated, confused by the sight. A crowd that refused to be divided was harder to control than any fortress. Valerian addressed them all. "This city has lived on fear for too long," he said. "Humans fear us. We fear what we might become. But tonight, a child has arrived who belongs to neither side's hatred." He paused, voice turning raw with honesty. "If you want him, you will have to take him in front of witnesses, in front of people who will remember what you do." The leader's eyes narrowed. He glanced at the crowd, counting, measuring. Witnesses can be silenced. Myralda, who had been standing behind Valerian like a sharp shadow, suddenly spoke, not to the hunters, but to the crowd. "They will come again," she said, voice trembling with reluctant truth. "And if they win tonight, they will not stop with the child. They will decide who deserves to exist." Lina stepped into view then, holding the baby tight. She was shaking, but she did not hide. The baby looked out at the torches and the faces and did something that felt like a sign. He stopped fussing. His eyes were calm. His tiny hand lifted, reaching toward the lantern light as if he wasn't afraid of it. A murmur spread through the crowd, vampires and humans alike, soft, stunned. The hunter leader pointed. "There, give him here." Valerian moved in front of Lina instantly. His voice dropped into a warning that didn't need anger to be feared. "No." The leader's men shifted forward, torches flaring. And then Valerian did something no one expected. He stepped aside. Not to surrender the child, but to reveal Lina, the baby, and the gathered crowd clearly, plainly, under the lantern light. "So everyone can see," Valerian said, his voice carrying, "who comes with fire and who comes with open hands." The hunters advanced one more step, then stopped. Because behind Valerian, the vampires did not surge forward to attack. They simply stood, steady, refusing to be provoked into becoming the story the hunters had written for them. That quiet restraint unsettled the hunters more than any threat could. Tomas, shaking but standing, called out, "We're not giving you a baby because you're having a loud night." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd, and it broke something, like tension cracking so people could breathe again. The hunter leader's face darkened. "This is your choice, then." He raised his hand as if to signal an order, but one of his own men, a young hunter with tired eyes, did not move. He stared at the baby, at the mark, at Lina's protective hold. "My sister," the young hunter said suddenly, voice hoarse. "They said she was cursed too. They said it was mercy to take her away." The leader snapped, "Silence." The young hunter's hands shook. "No, I'm done being silent." He stepped out of line, lowering his torch. Another hunter wavered, then another. It didn't happen like a heroic trumpet blast. It happened like a slow, human realization. Some people were only brave when they stopped obeying. The leader's confidence cracked, and he looked around, furious. "Cowards." Valerian spoke softly, almost sorrowfully. "They're not cowards, they're finally choosing." The leader's eyes narrowed into hatred. "This kingdom will fall the moment the sun rises. You know that." Valerian lifted his chin, then let it rise. Those words landed hard. Myralda stared at him as if he had just set down a crown made of iron and picked up a crown made of responsibility instead. The hunter leader backed away, realizing he had lost control of his own narrative. "This isn't over," he spat. "We will return with stronger blessings and bigger flames." Valerian didn't argue. He didn't chase them. He simply watched as they retreated into the trees, their torches shrinking until they became scattered stars in the fog. When the last voice faded, the crowd remained. No one cheered. It wasn't that kind of victory. It was the kind that left you shaking because you understood what you almost became. Valerian turned to Lina. His eyes fell on the baby, and his voice turned very quiet. "He chose me," he said, more question than statement. "Or he chose what I could be." Lina's tears finally fell, not from fear but from relief. "What happens now?" Valerian looked at the people gathered. Vampires who had been taught to hide, humans who had been taught to hate, and a child who seemed to belong to both worlds without asking permission. "We change the story," Valerian said. Myralda took a step forward, her pride fighting with her conscience. "And if the council refuses?" Valerian's answer was gentle, and that gentleness somehow made it final. "Then I will be the first king in our history to step down before I step on a child." Tomas exhaled, stunned. "That might actually be the most terrifying thing you've ever said, sir." Valerian glanced at him. "Good, fear the right things." They walked back inside, not as a king returning from conquest, but as a man returning from a decision he could never undo. In the small firelit room, Valerian placed his hand near the baby, not touching, just close enough to feel the warmth. The golden light softened, and for the first time Valerian noticed something else. The light didn't burn his skin. It didn't reject him. It accepted him. Lina sat with the baby against her chest. "He needs a name," she whispered. Valerian looked at the child, then at the dark window where dawn would eventually arrive. His voice was almost a prayer. "Lucen," he said. "It means light that finds a way." The baby yawned, tiny and trusting, then curled his fingers again around Valerian's thumb. In that small grip was a message Valerian felt in his bones. Power wasn't proven by what you could take, but by what you chose to protect. Tomas, trying to lighten the air, muttered, "So we're raising a sun-proof baby in a vampire castle. That's normal." Lina let out a shaky laugh through her tears. "Completely normal." Valerian watched them. This brave girl, this ridiculous servant, this impossible child. And something inside him, something that had been starving for centuries, finally felt full. Outside, far away, a rooster crowed in the human quarter, announcing morning like it had no idea what had happened in the dark. Valerian didn't flinch. He simply whispered, to no one and everyone, "Let the sun come." And as the first pale line of dawn touched the horizon, the castle's oldest window, sealed shut for generations, made a faint sound, like a lock turning from the inside.